I have experienced the pain of discrimination. I know what it feels like to be pulled over for no reason, to be followed around the store while I'm shopping. I've also experienced a different kind of intolerance. I get called Uncle Tom and the N-word by progressives, by liberals.
Senator Tim Scott, one of only 3 black Republicans in Congress, tried to give his party cover in delivering the response to Biden's presidential address, saying explicitly that America is not a racist country, even as he addressed his own experiences with racism. He also went on to condemn those who would use race as a political weapon. Vice President Kamala Harris was asked today if she agreed with Senator Scott.
I don't think America is a racist country, but we also do have to speak truth about the history of racism in our country and its existence today. It does not help to heal our country, to unify us as a people, to ignore the realities of that. And the idea is that we want to unify the country, but not without speaking truth and requiring accountability as appropriate.
Joining me now is Jelani Cobb, staff writer at The New Yorker, and Dr. Christina Greer, both doctors. Dr. Christina Greer, associate professor of political science at Fordham University. Dr. Greer, I'm going to start with this, because this was a big thing yesterday. You can criticize Tim Scott all you want. You can say that Tim Scott is sold out. You can say Tim Scott was lying or dishonest. But nationally, Uncle Tim was trending on Twitter last night. And to me, it was reminiscent of people referring to Condoleezza Rice as Aunt Jemima during the Bush administration. Twitter eventually shut down the Uncle Tim hashtag. But just from your perspective, historically, racially, and politically, what do you think about the fact that that was trending last night? And do you find it as problematic as I did?
Yeah, I definitely find it problematic, but I mean, I think it's also one of those things where on social media, the internal conversations that many black people have about Tim Scott and the Republican Party have now made their way to the public discourse. I mean, let's be clear. Looking at Tim Scott's response, we know that he's carrying the water not just for the Republican Party and his 2 other black colleagues, but he did so under the Trump administration. So that's where the lack of respect comes from. When he talks about growing up in a 1-bedroom house, ask yourself, why did you grow up in a 1-bedroom house? Because your party doesn't believe in equality. Ask yourself why your grandfather didn't know how to read. It's because your party actually defunds education. Ask yourself why it is that you went to failing schools. It's because your party doesn't value education, especially for black youth, especially for people in the South. So the fact that Tim Scott tried to make an individual conversation when it should be a larger institutional problem that his party is part of, and one of the main reasons why we have such inequity, explains why this Uncle Tim hashtag was trending, and explains the frustration also that many Democratic Christians had, where he's trying to weaponize Christianity in a way that lots of Democratic Christians were like, what are you talking about? Like, we can actually believe in, Christ or whatever the indoctrination is without actually having policies that destroy not just our country, but so many people across the globe.
So, Jelani, I want to continue with this, because to me, you can make the criticism that basically Tim Scott has sold his soul to a conservative Republican Party that has oppressed him, oppressed his family one way or another. But a lot of people don't necessarily understand why referring to him as Uncle Tim is offensive. To me, it has to do with the idea that no outside community should be allowed to dictate what black authenticity is. But it might be even deeper than that. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think there's a lot to it, on many levels. But let's just start with the fact that, Tim Scott, even before this last incident, he wrote a month or so ago that, quote unquote, woke supremacy was worse than white supremacy, or as bad as white supremacy. And it was an astounding thing to say. And, I responded on Twitter saying I've been in a room with Tim Scott exactly once. And that was at a commemoration for the 9 people who were murdered in the basement of the Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina, by the white supremacist Dylann Roof. And so that is a kind of embarrassing position to take. The most charitable version of what you could see in Tim Scott was that he was trying to grease the wheels for whatever kinds of political reform or police reform we're going to get in this bill. And he's trying to build up political capital that will allow him to bring some of his Republican colleagues along. But even in that light, it's indefensible to make these comments in the context of how many, I've lost track of how many black people have been killed, unarmed black people have been killed this month in encounters with police. And if he wanted to have this debate about whether or not America is a racist country, I mean, I disagree with him and Kamala Harris. Yes, this is a racist country. When we look at the institutional outcomes, every single major institution that we have has a racial disparity in what the outcomes of people's relationships are with it. And so if that doesn't qualify you as a racist country, then we just simply don't know what racism is.
When Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg can say we literally have racism baked into our highway system, I really don't think Tim Scott is in much of a position to criticize him. Speaking of his bill, Jelani, so Tim Scott was saying, hey, look, I had this bill and the Democrats stopped it. What I noticed about his sort of police reform bill is it just collected information. It collected data on use of force. I don't need another register of dead black bodies. I want to hear consequences. What did you think about his suggestion that he was at least a starting point and that the Democrats were stopping him because they were too woke for what he was putting forward?
Well, yeah, woke, as in they wanted to actually tackle the issue of chokeholds, which his bill did not address. And people were saying, look, this is a non-starter, that we need to have a federal ban on chokeholds. There was also the simple fact of qualified immunity, which is at the heart of all this. The lawlessness that we have within law enforcement is abided by the fact that people know that there won't be consequences for their actions. And so, yeah, those were significant obstacles. And it was disingenuous to say that this is simply about wokeness. Those were substantive policy differences that doomed that bill.
Dr. Greer, so even in the wake of this, some of the lawyers for Andrew Brown, they went to Washington, D.C. They had conversations with Lindsey Graham. They had conversations with Tim Scott. Do you think Tim Scott is trying to position himself as a deal maker on police reform? Do you think this is something that he thinks will help him long-term politically? Or do you think it's actually a well-founded belief? Because, again, I have difficulty believing a guy who can, on the one hand, say, I'm tired of being pulled over by the police, I'm worried about it, is going to be serious when it comes to police reform.
Right. I have no idea what's in the heart of Tim Scott, just to put that out there. But I mean, let's be clear. That entire party is being held hostage by Donald Trump because none of them can plan for their future in 2024 until the former president decides whether he wants to get off the sidelines or not. I think also Tim Scott is their poster boy. He's their one. So if they're going to talk about a racial issue, he's the one. Give it to Mikey. Put him out front. Let him talk about policing and cops and whatever it may be. And he's willing to do that. He's always been willing to do that. And that's how and why he's the one who gave the rebuttal.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Dr. Greer. Thank you very much, Jelani Cobb, for joining our show tonight.